we started a series here a few weeks ago called Stronger Faith. Everybody say Stronger Faith. Stronger Faith. And so we believe that we want our faith to grow stronger as we live the Christian life. So we're going to kind of continue that. And today we're talking about a faith that keeps going. If we were to use a church word, we would say persevered. Everybody say persevered. But we're not going to say that today. We're going to say a faith that what? Keeps going. Just keeps going. Sometimes I'm too tired to persevere, but I think I could keep going, you know. And so grab your Bibles, turn to Genesis chapter 29. We'll be there in just a little bit. But we've been looking at the lives of some heroes in the Old Testament, specifically in the book of Genesis. And really the kind of our whole goal of this series is that we want to trust God more and stress less. Everybody say trust God. Stress less. How many of you could use a little bit more of that? I mean, I could use a little bit more. Trusting God, stressing less. That's where our goal is today. You know, life does not as a whole work out as we had it planned. I think that we probably all could agree with that life oftentimes does not work out as we thought that it would, or as we had life to be planned. Things happen differently. And sometimes people change, sometimes we change. Sometimes there's delays in our life that all of a sudden we end up waiting on something. I don't know how well you do with waiting. I don't do well with waiting. But none of us really like waiting. Some of us like it even less. But we have delays in our life. We have waiting in our life. We have obstacles that come in our life. We have challenges that come in our life. And they really just put our life at a stop. When those things happen, sometimes things just stop in our life because we don't know where to go. We don't know what to do because something hit us that we weren't expected. Nobody likes to be blindsided. You know, you wake up one morning and you see something totally different than what you saw, or something happened overnight, or something happened first thing in the morning, and yet things happen like that. We wake up, we have challenges, we have obstacles, we have things, and yet we're really asked the question. It's kind of the question I hope that we can answer this morning is am I going to give up or am I going to keep going? And that really is the choice on every obstacle, everything that comes to life. Am I going to give up and just quit? Or am I going to decide, hey, you know what, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep trying. I'm going to keep trying to make things better, keep trying to make things different in my life. So sometimes when we learn to keep going and we learn to trust God through things, God strengthens our faith. Okay, so we've got to learn to trust God. I had a friend text me just the other night and say that he had thrown his back out. He's a runner. He runs 5 and 6 miles a day, and he and I share our health data on our watches, and I got a notice that he had completed like a 1 mile walk. And I asked him, I said, what's this 1 mile walk? Because he usually runs 5 or 6 miles. I mean, you know, I don't run with him, in case you were wondering. We don't do that together. I just think I should come out from among them and be separate, says the Bible. And so I don't want to do the running. And or something like that. And so he said, yeah, he said, I threw my back out. I said, how'd you throw your back out? He said, well, my wife says I carry my stress in my back. Now, I don't know how possible that is, but he carried your stress in his back. So I asked him this question, what are you not trusting God for? Because if you're stressing, you're not trusting. Okay? Let's just get down to brass tacks real quick. If you're really stressing over something, then you're not trusting that God can take care of it because you're stressing, because you think your stressing is going to fix it better than trusting God to fix it. And so I asked him, and he said, well, I am trusting God. But then he began to tell me, well, I just buried my first church member this week because of COVID, and I just had one of my other members is getting kicked out of her housing, and she doesn't have a place to go. And he began to tell me all these things that he's beginning to stress about. And as we talked for a few moments, we both figured out that what he's really doing is that he's not totally trusting God, and he's beginning to stress. Now, as a pastor, we care about our people, and it affects us. When you're affected adversely, it affects us. But what you don't need me to do is to stress with you. Because then we're just both stressed out, and we're both going to have backaches or whatever kind of aches we're going to have, and it's not going to do us any good because my stressing can't change your problems. But me trusting God might make things different. So we have to stress less and trust more. We're going to be looking at Jacob this morning. I don't know how familiar you are with Jacob. If you're super familiar with Jacob, just sit there and act like you don't know anything about Jacob so the person beside you doesn't feel inferior. So just act dumb. For me, that comes natural. And so Jacob made some really dumb decisions. How many of you made dumb decisions? And maybe let me ask you this way. How many of you are sitting beside somebody who makes dumb decisions? That's not a good time to raise your hand. But, it's a good thing for us that the heroes of the Bible weren't perfect people. Because if they were perfect people, it wouldn't give me much hope that God could use me. I still go back to the fact that God used the donkey. And he's still using donkeys today. Some of you, that really greatly offends. But it's okay. You'll get over it. God uses flawed people. God uses people that are messed up. I mean, look at David. I mean, yes, he was this great psalmist, and yes, he was this great worshiper, but did you forget Bathsheba? We kind of just forget that right in the middle of it, he had a major faux pas. He had a major whoops. He had a major I blew it. And yet we tend to look at people when they mess up and they're like, oh, they're done. But God doesn't look at people as though they're done. He looks at it that we just got to rework some things and do some changing and make somebody a little bit better, cleaner, purer in that area, and we're going to go on. So God uses flawed people, and that's why I'm convinced that God can use us, because the people of the Bible were flawed. So we're going to see a faith that keeps going, a faith that perseveres, if you want to use that word, through the challenges and the struggles of life. It strengthens our faith when we begin to persevere, when we begin to stick with it. So Jacob, he was the younger of the two brothers. His older brother's name was Esau, and their father was on his deathbed. I'm just kind of bringing you up to date with where the story was. Their father was getting ready to bless Esau, the brother, and he was going to bless him with the abundance of wealth, and he was going to give him the family inheritance. He was fixing to get it all, and he was going to give him the mantle of leadership, basically, of the entire family, and Esau was getting ready for this, but Jacob snuck in and convinced his father that he was Esau. Okay? Have you ever tried to convince somebody that you were something that you weren't? Hold on, we lost connection here. Do you know somebody who tried to be somebody who they weren't? It didn't work out well for them. That's like us when we try to stress on our problems because we think we can fix them. We're trying to be somebody that we're not. We're trying to be God and figure out how we are stressing. Anyway, I don't want to pick on you too much because some of you are guests, but I would like to maybe see you again. So I told you, Jacob was flawed. He was really messed up because he sneaks in and he tries to act like he's the brother, and he gets the father to give his blessing. And Esau, when all this happened, because right in the middle of that, Jacob's father then blessed him and gave him the family blessing. So Esau's not very happy about it. Esau wants to kill Jacob. Now all of a sudden we have the making of a Lifetime movie here. And Jacob, he runs away immediately, kind of like a coward, and he had to flee, and he went to his uncle Laban's house. He was fleeing his life, and where he would just kind of lay low for a while and kind of not be seen. So he had to leave his home. He had to leave his plans for his future. He had to leave the blessing that his father was giving to him, and he wasn't able to pursue it in the way that he wanted to pursue it, and he had to wait for all that. In Genesis chapter 29, verse 12, that's where we're picking up with the story. 29, verse 12, and it says this, that he explained to Rachel that he was her cousin on her father's side and the son of her aunt Rebekah. So he quickly ran and told her father Laban. And as soon as Laban heard that his nephew Jacob had arrived, he ran out to meet him. He embraced him and kissed him and brought him home. And when Jacob told him the story, Laban exclaimed, "You really are my own flesh and blood." You'll understand that a little bit more here in a minute. After Jacob had stayed with Laban for about a month, Laban said to him, you shouldn't work for me without any pay because we're relatives. Tell me how much your wages should be. Now there's a lesson for kids today. He stayed for a month and didn't work, but there came a time where he had to start working. Okay, well, I just thought I'd point that out there, that there's a time where, it's time you go to get a job. And so you got to do that. Anyway, that has nothing to do with my message, just a free thing. Thought I'd throw that in there. There's a time there where you got to work. Larry Curry's not going to smile at me no matter what I do, but it's okay. I'm picking on you. It's okay. And so there's a time where you got to start working, where you can't just sit at home and be lazy anymore. You got to start working, whether they're family or not. That was my point, but it really had nothing to do with nothing, so I'll just leave that one go. So Jacob had been laying low for a month there, just kind of hanging out. Esau's still mad at him, still wants to kill him, and he's not going to get over it. His uncle Laban says, hey, listen, since you're going to be here, I don't want you working for me for free. What do you want that I can give you, and then you work and I'll pay you this. So on the surface, it seems that everything is going to be really good and everything's going to work out. And then Jacob at that point had one thing on his mind. Okay, some of you guys remember when you were courting, if you remember courting or dating or whatever you were, or going with is what they said when I was a kid. He had one thing on his mind, and you find it in Genesis chapter 29, verse 16. It says, now Laban had 2 daughters. Everybody say, uh-oh. Here's where the Lifetime movie comes into it, okay? Had 2 daughters. The older daughter's name was Leah, and the younger daughter was named Rachel. And there was no sparkle in Leah's eyes. I don't know what that means, but I think I kind of have a picture there, Anyway, but Rachel had a beautiful figure and a lovely face. And verse 18 says, since Jacob was in love with Rachel, we used to call it, can I say it, Bob? It's like some people's ugly goes all the way to the bone. I don't know if that's the way it was with Leah. I'm just saying, maybe just don't get mad and crucify me, because I'm just saying that he said Rachel had a beautiful face, and the other one he didn't say that about, so I'm just wondering. I don't know. But since Jacob was in love with Rachel, the beautiful one, he told her father, I'll work for you for 7 years if you'll give me Rachel, your younger daughter, as my wife. Now, I thought Brother Goff, when I married, for those of you who don't know, my father-in-law is up here on the front row in the black coat, black suit, white hair, and sitting by the beautiful lady that's beside him. And there's sparkle in her eyes, so that's a good thing. And so my father-in-law made me pay, I think it was 36 goats and 4 heads of sheep and 12 cows that I paid for my wife. Some of you are like, really? I'm like, no, he really didn't do that. But So Jacob here, he's willing to work for Rachel. He's so in love with this girl. He's willing to work 7 years just to get this woman. How about that? Now, I want you to answer this question, but don't answer it out loud. Don't make a face. Don't nod your head. Don't click your finger. Just don't move. Pretend like you're at an auction. Would you have worked 7 years for your wife? Don't change your face, guys. It will get you in a lot of trouble, okay? Just sit there, okay? But ask yourself that question. Anyway, let's move on. So it seems like everything on the surface is going to be really sweet, romantic, love story. Everybody's just going to get along, happy ever after. There comes the music, the romantic music, and that's just how the story goes. But Jacob found himself in this position to start with, because remember, he had swindled his brother Esau out of his inheritance. Don't forget that. He still just recently has kind of messed up. He had to run away so fast he didn't have anything to offer Laban in exchange for his daughter's hand, so he had to work. There's an interesting thing right there. If you want something in life, you got to work for it. It's not just a bunch of handouts. Anyway, that has nothing to do with my message, but just came to me and I thought I'd share it with you. So he agreed to work for him for 7 years for the right to marry Laban's daughter, the pretty one. And so that's kind of the story of Jacob's life. It really is just a story of struggle. Like the whole time is just struggle. Have you ever, maybe you know somebody, or maybe you even feel like your life has been that way. It's just like there's one thing after another. It just never stops. It's struggle after struggle after struggle, and you finish this and you start this, and you finish this and you start that. I was talking to somebody on the phone the other night, and it was like, well, I got this fixed and then this happened. And I got this fixed and then that broke. And it's just one constant struggle after another. All throughout his life, he had to wait. He had been delayed. He had obstacles that come, and things didn't happen the way that he wanted them to happen in his life. And things didn't happen in the time frame that he wanted them to happen in his life. And he faced obstacles, and now he was trying to see his dreams fulfilled. Maybe you and I are a lot like Jacob, that we've had a dream that's been delayed. We've had something inside of us that we hoped and we thought and we dreamed for, but it just didn't happen. And you've been wondering, did I make the right decision? Did I really make the right decision to decide to go this way? Maybe you thought you'd be married by now. Maybe you thought you'd have kids by now. Maybe your dream hasn't worked out the way that you expected, and you're kind of at a crossroads and you're just like, which way do I go? Because this didn't happen that should. And you're wondering, what am I going to do? Am I going to keep moving forward towards this? Am I going to give up and just go back? And all these are lessons that we can learn from Jacob's life. In the midst of all the delays that he went through and all the waiting in life, if we'll just keep going on in faith, because that's what we're talking about today, if we'll just trust God through those things, then I believe that God will strengthen our faith and we'll begin to experience His blessing in our life, because we just kept going. Not if we stand the tallest, but if we just keep going. Maybe you could write this down in your notes if it's not there, because here's a great statement. My faith grows stronger every time I refuse to give up. My faith grows stronger every time I just refuse to give up. It's not that I'm the greatest, because I'm not. It's not that I have all knowledge, because trust me, I don't. I don't even know anybody that does other than God. It's not that I have the most talent, but I just refuse to give up. I refuse to quit. I refuse for whatever. Yes, you may knock me down, but I'm going to get back up. So I have 4 points I want to give you real quick this morning. Number one is this. A keep going faith or a persevering faith strengthens me when I expect challenges in my life. When I expect challenges in my life. Well, Pastor Kevin, that's really negative. No, it's positive. There's going to be challenges in your life. I can tell you that when you come to Christ and you start coming to church and you get involved with the family of God, everything's just going to get perfect. But life comes with its own set of challenges. I mean, I guarantee you it's going to happen. Genesis chapter 29, verse 20, after agreeing to work for 7 years to be able to marry Rachel, Jacob's about ready to face another big challenge. We find that in verse 20, chapter 29, verse 20. It says, so Jacob worked the 7 years to pay for Rachel. Listen to this. But his love for her was so strong that it seemed to him like a few days. Oh, I knew you would do that. It just seemed like a few days. That's amazing. Again, it's Lifetime or Hallmark in the making. All we need is a Christmas tree and some lights and we've got it. He worked 7 years and he said, oh, that was nothing. My love for you is that great. I feel that way about my wife. You know, if I would have had to work 15 years for Melody, it would have been worth it. I'm glad it only cost me a few cows and sheep and a goat, but that just seems like such a small anyway. So Jacob had finished the task. He had worked the 7 years. We sped up really quick. He kept his word. He had worked 7 years. He had gotten to the point that he had agreed to with Laban and what was going to happen next. But his uncle Laban was a dishonest guy, and he tricked Jacob. Okay, so the story's fixing to get complicated, and then we're going to go to commercial break. Laban didn't want his oldest daughter, Leah, the one that didn't have the sparkle in her eye, to get passed over and Jacob be able to marry Rachel. So at the last minute, he changed the deal. Don't you hate it when people change the deal? It's like, keep the deal the deal. Whatever the deal is, let it be the deal. So he changed the deal and he made Jacob marry Leah instead of Rachel. Yeah. The one who wasn't so pretty but her ugly went all the way to the bone. Okay? Maybe. So Genesis chapter 29. Isn't it going to be funny when you get to heaven and meet Leah and you're like, oh, no, never mind. Genesis chapter 29 verse 25 says this. But when Jacob woke up the next morning, he's married now, and he woke up and he looks over to what he thinks is his wife. I'm like, don't you think you would have seen this by now? I mean, like, why did it take all night for you? I don't know. Anyway, maybe that's a whole nother subject. We'll let Diane Curry teach us that one day because I'm sure she has revelation on that. But anyway, I don't know. But he says, what have you done to me? Jacob raged at Laban. He's a little bit more than mad. He's in full-blown rage. What have you done? I've worked 7 years for Rachel. Why have you tricked me? Isn't that kind of funny? We have a tricker calling a tricker a tricker. I mean, because remember what he did with his father back here. And here it's kind of coming around. Again, there's another lesson. I'm not going to point it out. I'm sure you get it. But Jacob made a deal with Laban. And what does Laban do? He tricks him. He tricks him out of what he promised. Does that sound familiar? Have you ever felt like kind of tricked? Like you said you would do this, but you didn't do this? You know, and now I don't know where that really leaves me, but Laban tricked Jacob out of what he'd been promised in the exact same way that Jacob had tricked Esau out of what had been promised to him. And so that kind of tells me that what goes around comes around. Jacob was given his years of his life, 7 years of his life to Laban. He had been cheated. He did the right thing, but then it didn't turn out quite the way he thought it was. And this is so important. If you don't get anything else, get this. When it comes to learning to keep going in life, because all of us want to quit at some point. When we learn to keep going, keep moving forward in our faith, because life is not going to go as planned. People are not going to do what people say they will do. Somewhere down the road, things are not going to happen in your life, but you can't stop there. You have to keep going. Amen. If you don't get anything else, get that. Yes, it's going to happen. You're going to have a Laban come in your life, and something's not going to line up the way that they promised it to you. But you can't stop. You got to keep going. So if you don't admit that and come to terms with that, you're going to lose heart the first time all your plans are blown away. Some of us are facing big obstacles in our life right now. There's lots of things going in our country that we're facing right now. You worked hard, you didn't get what you were supposed to, but somebody else mysteriously got in the race and somebody else got the promotion. But you didn't get the promotion that you thought you were going to get. What you were supposed to get, but somebody else blocked you. Somebody else did, you did everything you could to save your marriage, but your spouse was not willing to work it out and now you're divorced. Maybe that's an obstacle you're facing, or you banked your future on a business deal that was going to happen, and that business deal did not happen the way that it was supposed to, and it left you in a real compromised place, and now you don't know what to do. Here's what you do. Keep going. Have faith. So we don't always see the challenges of life coming. In fact, most of them were blindsided by a friend, not a friend, but an acquaintance of mine. Carrie Newhoff wrote a book called I Didn't See That Coming. A great book if you ever want to read a book. I Didn't See That Coming. Those are the ones that hurt the most. Those things that hit you out of nowhere. But we have to decide now, before that happens to us, that we're going to turn to God in those moments. Not turning to calling and complaining and whining and dining and all this stuff, but we've got to decide, hey, before this ever happens to me, I'm going to decide that I'm going to trust God. Not that it's not going to hurt, because it's going to hurt. It may even leave a mark, as they say. So nothing worthwhile ever comes easy. Jesus told us that we should expect these kind of challenges. He told us that in John chapter 16, verse 33. It's on the screens. He said, I've told you this so that you may have peace in me. Here on earth, that's where we are, we're going to have trials and sorrows. But listen, but take heart because I've overcome the world. Now, don't put the rest of your sentence in there, but he didn't know what was going to happen to me. Because remember, he's God and he knew. I'm going to go back to what I said. If you're stressing, you're not trusting. And we've got to make ourselves learn to do that. That's the first step. Perseverance, or a keep going faith, strengthens me when I expect challenges in my life. I know they're coming, so when I see them happening, it just strengthens my faith that I know God said they were coming, but he said I could have peace in him. Number 2 is this. Keep going faith strengthens my faith when I look for God's purposes while I'm waiting. A keep going faith strengthens my faith when I look for God's purposes while I'm waiting. I don't just sit around there. Oftentimes we are notorious for looking at everything bad that's going on in our life. And we can point it out. We know where it's at. I keep rubbing my eye, if you're wondering, because I got lotion in my eye. And so while my eye is now lubricated, I can't see very good. But I'm going to keep going, okay? So Jacob lived his life kind of in the waiting room. Things never really happened the way he wanted. He waited his entire life. He waited 7 years to be married for Rachel. He had worked. He had waited. And imagine if you had put in all this work and waited all this time only for it to be taken away from you at the last minute. And then Laban made him work another 7 years. In chapter 29, verse 28, it says this, "So Jacob worked another 7 years more. A week after Jacob married Leah, Laban gave Rachel to him too." So now it's been 14 years. 14 years for this one woman. Guys, let me ask you the question. Would you have worked 14 years for your wife? 14 years of hard, don't do it, Larry. 14 years he had to put up with his uncle Laban and his cheating ways. For 14 years before he could take his new family home. 14 years Jacob had kept his word to Laban and he had fulfilled his promise. But at the end of the deal, even though he had put in the effort, he was left with more waiting to do. Sometimes that happens to us when we're waiting to be appreciated by a boss. Sometimes when we're waiting to be appreciated by a spouse. Some of you may have been waiting a lot longer than 14 years just to find out that he really appreciates you or she really appreciates you. Maybe you're waiting to complete your degree so that you can move on with your life. Maybe you're waiting now in the waiting room over a health crisis that you're going through now. Isn't it amazing how those things stop our life? I mean, one phone call from a doctor can change your whole day. I don't know about in your life, but in my life, one chipped tooth, Bob, can just ruin my whole century. Because it means I've now got to go to the dentist. And oh my goodness, he may have to pull my tooth out, or he may have to drill on me, or I may have tooth cancer, or I might have a tumor in my tooth. I mean, I'm a creative guy. One little diagnosis from a doctor, one little diagnosis from your boss, one little diagnosis from your banker, one little word from a friend about another friend, it has the tendency sometimes to put us in the waiting room. All of our life stops while we deal with that. I wonder how far we could be in life if we just got ourselves out of the waiting room. When I go to a doctor, the worst thing I hate, other than needles, well, I hate a lot of things about going to the doctor now that I think about it. One of the things I hate about going to the doctor is the waiting room. I'm just like, we had an appointment at 10:30. I expected 10:30 to be sitting in your royal presence. How many of you know it doesn't normally work out that way? And what about us? When things come at us, when obstacles come at us as Christian people, and obstacles come at us and things happen that detain us or deter us, it puts us in a waiting room and we sit right there and wait, and all of life goes on without us while we wait for something to happen rather than trusting God and going on with life as we should. It makes you wonder sometimes, God, what's up with all the waiting? Why do I have to wait? Why can't just things work out the way that they should in my life? Maybe you've asked that question. I know I have. Why does things have to be so difficult? Why do things can't just work out? I think there's 3 reasons there. Let me give them to you real quick. Number 1, I think God wants to draw me closer. I think God wants to draw me closer to Him. If you've been drifting away from Him for years, maybe you've been relying on yourself instead of Him, and you're coming to Him with your needs, He's the one that you need to lean on, to trust on. He's the one that can really bring you through what you're going through. And that's what happened with Jacob. Jacob made a mistake in his life, and God had him in this waiting room to teach him things, to help him, to grow his faith, to trust in Him more. And God makes us wait until we return back to Him. So maybe you're in a waiting room today because God wants to draw you close. Number 2, maybe God sometimes makes us wait because God has something better for us. Maybe God has something better. You thought what you had was the perfect job, and you say, God, why did it go away? Why didn't that work out? Maybe it was a better job. Maybe it was a person you really loved, and you thought you were going to get married and spend your lives together. Why didn't it work out? Maybe God has somebody better for you. Maybe that business deal didn't work out the way that you thought it should because God's got another business deal that's even better, and He wanted to make sure you didn't get that business deal. Right before God brings His best, the Holy Spirit, the evil spirit, the enemy, the devil, actually always gives us the cheap substitute. And we say, oh, there's an open door. Sometimes God will have us wait so that we can experience His best instead of settling for something second best. Number 3, I think that God sometimes makes us wait because He wants to grow us. He just wants to grow us up a little bit. I know that that's uncomfortable, and most of us don't feel like He wants to grow our character. He wants to grow who we really are. He wants to grow our faith. Because when we wait, when God teaches us to trust Him, when we're having to wait through the process to see His hand happen in our life, He teaches us endurance. He teaches us patience. He teaches us faith in those moments. And here's the problem with all that. We don't like it. We don't like it when God says, I want to teach you something. Sit here and let me teach you something, because we live in an instant society that quick we want things just to work out. Maybe God wants you to go through what you're going through, so on the other side of it, you're going to come out a better person. Your character, look at what some of the people in our Old Testament have gone through. So God may be working out some kind of purpose, and we're doing everything we can to force the issue, to get out of it quicker, to push forward, to make something happen, even though it's not the right thing. But God has a purpose for the waiting room that you're in right now. Whatever you're going through, God has a purpose. And I know that His Word says that He'll work all things to our good and for His glory, for those who are called according to His purpose. So what's your role in that? Make sure you're called according to His purpose. And just begin to trust. And how will I know when it's done? When it's good. When God doesn't always do good. Well, then His Word is a lie, because He said He'd work it out for your good and for His glory if you were called according to His purpose. We're going to talk how to be called according to His purpose here in a minute, but there's a way to get to that point. James chapter 1, verse 2 and 4 says, Dear brothers and sisters, when troubles of any kind come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. What? Are you serious? All of hell is coming against you. This is wonderful. Isn't this great? I just got diagnosed with. My banker just called and said the deal is over. My wife, my husband, my boyfriend, my best friend just walked out of my life. My car's motor just blew up. My favorite cow that gives me the most milk just laid down and died. My lawnmower won't start. My car won't start. All my tires. I don't know where that came from. You know what I'm saying? Whatever happens. And all of a sudden, your perception is not, the favorite little thing now on social media is OMG. Oh my God, or oh my goodness. For those of you who are Christians and can't say God, you'd say goodness, but it means the same thing. It's okay. But instead, your thing is you say, hot diggity dog diggity. Look at this. God just gave me the opportunity. What is this going to, you know what I'm saying? How would that be? You know what I'm saying? Like I crack a tooth, I got to go get a root canal, and all of a sudden I'm saying, yes, I'm so excited. I get to go crank open my mouth bigger than it's supposed to go and have drills put in my mouth. And I'm pumped up about it. And I call everybody and I post it all over Facebook, for goodness sake. Look, I get to go to the dentist. I'm excited. I got great joy. So Paul says, consider it an opportunity for great joy. For you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. Growing hurts. That's why they call it growing pains. Not growing tickles or growing feels good, growing pains. In verse 4 says, so let it grow. Just turn to somebody and say, so let it grow. There was a song about that. Let it grow, let it grow. I think that was something like that. So let it grow, for when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete. Listen to this, needing everything. That's not what it says. It says needing nothing. When it all comes to pass, you're going to come out on the other end in a much better place. Oftentimes when we're waiting, God is working on something that we don't even know to fulfill His purposes that we can't understand. Maybe just what if, just look at it for just a moment. What if the answer to whatever you're going through today is just on the other side of tomorrow, and God's just waiting, looking at you to see if you're going to persevere for today? Because you win if you don't quit. Amen. If you don't quit, you're going to win. Amen. And so what if your winning is tomorrow morning when you wake up, but you quit tonight at 11:59? And you don't know when it's going to happen. But you've been promised in this word right here that you say you believe, the same book that explains to how you're saved, and you believe that. So God's working out his purposes in a way that Jacob could never understand. God was able to work his purposes through something incredible that happened many years later. And it's the same way in our life. And we may not understand all that's going on in the waiting room right now. But God is working out things that we can't see if we can just learn to trust. So keep going. It strengthens my faith when I, number one, expect challenges in my life because they're coming. Number two, when I look for God's purposes. And number three, a keep going faith strengthens me when I lean on God when I'm uncertain. When I lean on God when I'm uncertain. Can I tell you that all four of these things I struggle with? Can I just be honest? There's times that I struggle to have faith when things are uncertain. It just because I'm a pastor, it doesn't just there's not anointing that comes on me that I don't struggle anymore. I think I struggle with some of the same things you do. I put my pants on the same way you do, one leg at a time. I don't go to the edge of the bed, they come on two legs, and my shoes it doesn't happen that way. I struggle with that, but a keep going faith, the faith that says, you know what, I'm going to keep going rather than whining. Don't you get tired of people always whining and life is so bad? And you're like, dude, just keep going. That's why I'm not a great counselor. My idea of counseling is admit it, quit it, forget it, and get on with it. And that's all you really need in life. Admit that there's a problem. Quit your problem. Forget your problem. It's in the Bible, forgetting those things that are behind. And press on. That's the get on with it part. Admit it, quit it, forget it, get on with it. It can either be a tombstone or a stepping stone. Your choice. So we keep going. Faith strengthens me when I lean on God when I'm uncertain. It's been said that uncertainty is the only certainty in life. I think it's pretty true. I don't know who said it, but I'll claim it. So that's especially true in Jacob's life because he lived life with uncertainty. Was Esau ever going to track him down and kill him? Remember now, he's still got somebody that doesn't like him. Will he ever track him down and kill him? Was Laban going to actually keep his word this time? Was he really going to get Rachel after 14 years? Was he ever going to be able to return to his home? He lived with all kinds of uncertainty in his life, but no matter how uncertain Jacob's life seemed, he had faith that God was going to get him through whatever he was going through. Amen. He had faith that God would help him if he would just keep going. Genesis chapter 28, verse 15, it says this, Jacob was on the run from his home. We know that. He was headed towards Laban's home. God had promised him this, and he says, here's what God says, what's more, I am with you, and I will protect you wherever you go. Remember a few weeks ago I told you sometime you need to get a word from God. I mean, you not from somebody else. Quit calling people. Stop it. Remember that Bob Newhart? Was it Bob Newhart? Who was it that did that video where he's counseling that guy and he tells the guy, stop it. Just stop it. Stop calling everybody and just start trusting God. God, you need to get a word from God. The word from God is found right in here. Yeah, sometimes other people will give you a word, but it's always going to line itself up with what's in here. And you get yourself a word. Here's your word. What's more, I am with you. I will protect you wherever you go. One day I'll bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have finished everything that I've promised you. And plaster it everywhere. Put it in your heart where you can quote it forwards, backwards, and from the middle. It's part of you. It's part of your DNA. That I know that I am with you, that God's with me, that He'll protect me, that He'll bring me back to what I promised. Yes, I'm off base. I'm on a detour, but God's not going to leave me until He's fulfilled what He's promised in me. No matter how uncertain Jacob's life became, he trusted God. God had promised to care for him. God had promised to meet his needs. God had promised to protect him. And he was going to go through that, and he was going to keep going. He believed and he trusted God to keep his word. There's over 7,000 promises in the Bible, and every single one of those is true. Every single one of those are true. Many times when we're facing uncertainty, we forget that God keeps His word. His promises are true. When you face times of uncertainty, you just got to know in your heart that God keeps His word. So who can you lean on? Well, you can lean on other people. Number one, you can lean on other people. But you can lean on God, more importantly. He's the only one that's not going to fail you. He's the only one that's going to constantly. You can throw yourself into your job. You can throw yourself into your work. A lot of people do that. You can throw yourself into some kind of addiction. And sometime or another, you've got to stop that quick fix to get out your problem. And you've got to return back to God and put all your confidence in God. At some point, you've got to. Yes, I know God puts people around you to encourage you, and that's part of being in the body of Christ. That's part of, everybody has their place, and maybe your role as an encourager. It's certainly okay to trust in other, to lean on other people, but all that really leads to a dead-end road. Trusting in God leads somewhere. So when you're facing challenges in your life, you can lean on God. Philippians chapter 4, verse 13 says, "For I can do all things through Christ, through my own self-determination and a positive attitude." That's not what it says at all. Some of you looked up at the screen like, what did he say? That's not what it says. It didn't say anything about my own self-determination. For I can do everything through Christ, what? Who gives me, what? Strength. Where does your strength come from? God. Why are you looking in other places for answers if your strength comes from God? Here's number 4. We've got to end it because I'm out of time. A keep going faith strengthens me when I remain obedient and don't give up. A keep going faith strengthens me when I remain obedient and I don't give up. Every step of the way, Jacob could have given up. All along the way, he could have given up. When he was forced to leave home and go out on the run, he could have given up. When he thought his brother was going to kill him, he could have given up. When he was forced to work 7 years for the right to earn the lady that he wanted, he could have given up. When Laban changed the deal and made it a 14-year deal before he could ever get her, he could have given up. Jacob wasn't perfect. He made mistakes along the way. In fact, he had just blown it, but he trusted God. He persevered. He kept going, and God grew his faith as a result of that. Later on in Jacob's story, we don't have time to get there today, but Laban tried to cheat him again. Laban promised him a portion of his wealth by saying that he was going to give him a certain portion of his flocks and his goats and his sheep. And when Laban then took all those flocks and goats and sheep and he sent them away to a place that Jacob could never find them. Jacob, though, he kept his word. He kept being a man of integrity in the midst of that, even though Laban took advantage of him. Let me ask you a question. Do you have a Laban in your life now? Do you have a Laban in your life? Is there someone in your life who they only look out for themselves? They give you their word and then they break their word. They're only looking for how things can be of a better advantage to them, even if it's to your disadvantage. Maybe it's a boss who promised you a raise or promised you a transfer. Maybe I think it's hard to deal with Labans. You're working hard for everything you're supposed to be working for, but Laban keeps changing the mark for when you get there, how are you going to know that you're there? Laban keeps changing it, and you don't really know, how will I ever know when I get there? There's a Laban in our life. Most of us, I dare say, have a Laban in our life, and I'm not giving you a license or trying to give you a moment here where you can talk or crucify that person, because you know what? You're not perfect either. Because maybe you are a Laban in somebody else's life. Is there something that you're not keeping your word on? Did you say you'd do something but didn't do it? Did you say you'd be there but weren't? Oh, well, that's different, Pastor Kevin. No, it's pretty much the same thing. Maybe you're not keeping your word to your clients or to your spouse or to your kids. Or maybe those you work with. Maybe you're not keeping your word, and maybe you're looking to take advantage. Maybe you're not living with integrity. You don't mean to be a Laban. You don't want to be. You didn't set out to be. But maybe you had in the back of your mind, I'm going to do to them what's been done to me. They deserve it. It's within my rights to do that. But that's not the story of Jacob's life. Jacob didn't repay evil with evil. Jacob's story, he learned from his mistakes. He kept doing what was right. He kept being obedient to what he had been promised. He kept doing what he said he would do. He kept it whether Laban kept his word or not. That's me and you too. We don't want to sink to the level of the Labans in our life. We want to be people of integrity. We want to be people of trust. We want to be people who persevere or keep going through things. And every time we do, our faith gets stronger and stronger. You know, Jacob never gave up. He trusted God, and God blessed him as a result of that. Genesis chapter 30, verse 43 says this, as a result, Jacob became very wealthy. Everybody say very. Very. With large flocks of sheep and goats and female and male servants and many camels and donkeys. Why? Because he didn't stop. And there's no way that you'll ever convince me that what you're going through is any different. Oh, the players in your drama are different. The situations in your life are different than what Laban and Jacob and all those went through. But the root story remains the same, and it's a story of trust. It's a story of faith in God. It's a story of integrity. It's a story of not stopping. God blessed Jacob with wealth so that he could finally be free to return home and take his family with him. Jacob was obedient, and he didn't give up, and God blessed him. What are you going to do when you face life challenges? Are you going to quit? Are you going to stop? Are you going to turn your back and go home and maybe take the easy path? Let me tell you a little secret of Jacob's life, and we'll close with this. That's true of our lives too. The path of blessing and the path of stronger faith is seldom the easy path. In fact, most of the time it's just not the easy path at all. It's the difficult path. If you're struggling and you're facing challenges right now, that's good for you because it means you're on the path to stronger faith. Real faith is forged in the trials of life, in the tough times of life, when we don't give up, when we search for our purpose and we wait, when we lean on God when everything else has left us, in the middle of our uncertainty, doing what's right, even though nobody else may be doing what's right, I'm going to do what's right. When I don't give up, when I don't look for the easy way out, when I don't turn my back on what's right for what's easy. Maybe because it's just the simpler thing to do, but I keep going. I keep trusting God and allow Him to grow my faith as we go. Galatians chapter 6, verse 9 says this, so let's not get tired of doing what's good. Let's don't get tired of doing what's good. At just the right time. When? At the right time. Who's keeping the clock? God is. At just the right time, we will reap a harvest of blessing if we don't give up. If we don't give up. When? At just the right time. When will that be? I don't know when that right time is for you. So how do I find myself, Pastor Kevin, in the place that you said where God would work it out for my good and for His glory if I was called according to His purpose? It all starts with the relationship with Jesus Christ. Not church attendance, not coming to church with your mama, your daddy, or your bald-headed granny, but your relationship with Christ. It's that time when you and God decide to talk to each other and you say, God, I want you to be my Savior. I want you to be my Lord. I want you to come in and be the boss. I want you to forgive my sins. And guys, I don't care how big, bad, tough life is or how much you think you've got things going on. Without a relationship with Jesus Christ, one day you will spend eternity away from God. Yes, there is a heaven to gain, but there is a hell. There is a place of torment. And while I don't really want to talk about that because I think heaven's a much better place, the reality is if without a relationship with Jesus Christ, that's where you'll spend eternity. But the good news is that if you'll come to Christ and let Him wash your sins away and let Him be the Lord of your life, that you can spend eternity with Him, and that qualifies you to be called according to His purpose and for things in your life to begin to work out for your good and for His glory in His time. If you haven't done that, I encourage you this morning to make that decision. To make that decision to say, hey, I'm going to trust. I'm going to stop saying, I can't do this. can't make it. I can't go on and start saying I can. I'm going to trust in God, and I'm going to put my faith and confidence in Him, and my faith's going to grow. So God, I thank you so much this morning.